Now, as I'm sure you're aware, because there's already been like a zillion videos before mine, the lines on these things, the Overground, are all getting separate names. However, I didn't get them.
And here they are in the 6 different colours, making the map look more confusing, but with no continuous orange squiggle.
Now, I'm sure it's not surprising anyone that 4 of these 6 names are political. The mayor does love to virtue signal when he can. However, politics or people or events, I don't think it's a good construct for naming a line. It should be named after either where it goes or just like numbers and colours.
I mean, we could just have the red, green, blue, pink, black and yellow lines.
But rant now over, I'm going to visit all of the Overground lines, what their new names are going to be, why I think they're a little crap, and what I think they should be instead, starting with this line called the Lioness line, because it goes to this town where there is this ginormous mammoth of a building. It's the Wembley Stadium, biggest stadium in the UK, second biggest in Europe after Camp Nou and Barcelona. However, the Lionesses haven't played a prominent match here in recent times, and whilst it is near a rail line just over there, it's not this one. It's the Chiltern line. Now, whilst I am incredibly proud of the Lionesses and how they are giving the men's team a real run for their money, which we all know they have way too much of, the naming of it still feels a bit like a feminist virtue signal, and also more deeply in my heart, ever since I knew about this line, it's had a name. The Watford DC line says what it does on the tin, goes to Watford and runs on DC electrics. And now here at Wilston, you'll be changing onto the Mildmay line.
I imagine, like most of you, you didn't have a clue what Mildmay referred to.
It relates to this behind me, the Mildmay Hospital. This was set up as a charity hospital and was pretty prominent in helping HIV victims during the 80s AIDS crisis. However, down at the bottom of the street and through another little squiggle, it's not the Mildmay line, it's what will be the Windrush line.
Now, I'm sure you've all heard about this boat, especially in the past couple years. They've not stopped going on about it.
It is called as such because it goes through places such as here. This is Hoxton, where originally quite a lot of the Caribbeans on the Windrush moved to. The thing is, the line doesn't go round here, so the other side of the city to this sort of like Shepherd's Bush, Latimer Road, White City area, which is pretty synonymous with the Windrush generation. Instead, it goes through some of the most dangerous, crime-ridden, dysfunctional neighbourhoods in the city.
I don't you know that apart from the majority Caribbean passengers that were on board, there was a group of about 70 Polish refugees. Not quite sure how they got on board, but they were. As in, they were actual refugees. They were fleeing Nazism. They weren't just coming to Britain to look for better job prospects. But they barely got a mention during the recent Windrush celebrations. These were people that had to come to Britain. It wasn't that they chose to come to Britain. They had to. Yet I feel the overemphasis of Windrush being Caribbean erases the story of these Poles, some of whose children and grandchildren still live in Britain today. They could have just kept it as the East London line, as it was called when it was a tube line. However, I feel a more apt name for the line comes from
This, the Bruno Tunnel. It was the first railway tunnel underwater built in the world, and every single train on the line goes through it. The only places really in East London it went through were like Hoxton, Whitechapel, and here in Shoreditch, although it is the section that all the trains go through. They don't divide until south of the river. So maybe still a net name? And back to the Mildmay line. It's impossible to pronounce. Well, for its whole length, apart from on its western edges, it's all the way through North London. So why don't they just keep its original name? Or, if Richmond isn't North London enough for you, do a Bakerloo, make it the Richford or the Stratmond line. And now at Gospel Oak, on its western end, you change for what probably has the best name of any line, but soon to get what I think is probably the worst.
And whilst everyone knows the suffragette movement, there was another women's rights movement happening at the exact same time with over 50 times as many members, called the suffragists. But in the passage of time, they have just faded into obscurity, even though they were the pacifists who campaigned with marches and posters and peace.
And not setting off bombs or killing themselves via impromptu rodeo at the horse racing. The line has been named as such because the last suffragette to die lived all the way in that direction at the far eastern end in Barking. However, I still find it an affront and just an insult to its forever beloved name. The Goblin! My beloved Goblin! It was a mixture of end-to-end combination and just a cute name. And as Jaco Hazard and quite a few other people have said, as soon as this train breaks down and this line is clogged or whatever, it's going to be known as the Suffering or the Suffocation Line. And now here at Seven Sisters, the station just there, we reach probably the most benign name of all these new Overground lines, the Weaver Line, which commemorates the traditional industry around here along the River Lee of textiles and weaving. And I gotta say, they actually did good with this name. It's easy to say, and it relates to not just one location, but the whole location of the line. Although the Chingford branch of what will be the Weaver Line, which passes through here, also central, it is sort of its own thing. It skips the stops in southern Hackney, so I was thinking maybe this one be a separate line on the map, perhaps called the Ching Valley Line, as opposed to it all being the Weaver Line. And then that just leaves this one. I'm here at Romford. It may be the shortest and furthest out Overground line, but it is the closest one to my heart. This used to be my local line when I lived in Hornchurch. Emerson Park was my local station. And it has definitely got my favourite name, definitely got the most apt name. If you don't know, Havering used to be in what was called the Havering Liberty, because it was a section of land that wasn't controlled by the central government. They had their own independent powers. And that has given Havering its slogan to today, Liberty. So definitely the best named line out of the new ones. Definitely my favourite. Although I will concede the Romminster line is better.
But this all begs the question, what's in a name? Many say in a few years or a decade's time, we'll have forgotten the origins of these names. I doubt we will have them being so prominent, but they'll just be considered the name of the line. Windrush will just be that line that goes from Islington to Peckham, and it just doesn't matter. Well, it does to me. It really does. I'm so petty. I am the sort of person who's never liked the underground names either. I know most people just see them as lines, but it bugs me so much. Like, Epping and Ruislip are not in the centre, nor is Chesham anywhere metropolitan. It's incredibly rural. I've been there many times. Most of these lines, they were named after the railways that built them. So you had, I think it was called like the East Central Railway, and of course with the Metropolitan line, the Metropolitan Railway, in the hopes of expanding London out to Metroland. But for most people just using the system day in, day out, it's just the names, and they don't have an existential crisis over the fact that the Northern Line contains the 3 most southerly stations on the network like I do. But one thing all the tube lines do have, and the Overground lines now will have separate ones of, is colours, and I still hark back to my point earlier on. And as for location-based names, the tube really only has 2. The Bakerloo, which when named kicked up a massive fuss. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe they thought it sounded stupid. Yeah, it sounds stupid, but when you realise it's Baker Street past Waterloo, it makes perfect sense. And the other one is of course the Victoria line, but there's another line that goes through the Victoria. It's not the only one. I think they should have kept the original name that is on one of the promotional posters, the Viking line. That may have beat Bakerloo for best named tube line. But it still begs the question, should the Overground lines even have names?
I think not. It's all still part of the National Rail network. It doesn't run as frequently as the Tube. And also, I think if you really segment it into these specific lines, I feel like you're restricting the type of services that you can have on the network if you say, okay, this is a line, but there's still the capacity for there to be some overlapping because you're not running like every 3 minutes. I've made my own Overground proposal, along with railway line proposals and tram and metro networks for the whole entire country. If you don't know, I have a Facebook page where I have stored all of the proposal maps I have made all the way from London to Liverpool to Newcastle to like all regional railways across Britain. It's been my baby for the past year and my ongoing projects for like the past 7. But for my Overground network, I have a lot of overlapping. I worked it out that I've got these into, along with some suburban services leaving London Bridge that I would have branded as Overground. Within the sort of like orbital running lines, I would have 10 running 4 times an hour, 10 separate services with heavy overlapping, apart from the Goblin. That would be the only self-contained line still. And even then, I toyed with a network where trains starting from Clapham and going northwest go onto the Goblin, and then you've just got trains from Hounslow and Richmond going down to Stratford. And if you care, as for the Watford DC line, I would have it reconnected to the Bakerloo line, of course. And for the Lee Valleys to become Weaver lines, I would have them integrated into an extended Waterloo and City line. I wouldn't just have it be this little stub. I would have it going northeast to Bethnal Green, and then Lee Valleys flow into it, and go southwest to Clapham Junction and have all the little suburban lines and the southern network connect into it. But within the sort of branding and naming structuring, sort of where you have at the moment, you've got the London Underground and then some underground, well, 11 named lines. Then Overground and Elizabeth line are equals to Underground, whereas I would have it that the Underground is equal to all suburban rail, and then within that would be Overground branding, Crossrail branding, and then like C2C, Great Northern City, Southwest, and then we'll have Windsor lines and Southeastern combining over the Waterloo Viaduct. It would be that the Overground is equal to the Circle line or the District line. It equals to a line, and then within that you have services. Of course, with like the Victoria line, you've got one service, but even with the Jubilee, and especially with like the District and the Metropolitan, you're having 3 or 4. And even though my Overground network I think has 12, I still think it's a fair comparison, and that it would work better it being, here's the mode, here's the line or brand, and then these are the services, especially for my network overlapping so much. But anyway, semantics aside, I have loved seeing the fallout of all of this. By far the best thing to come out of this is people saying that the names of the lines should be our reality TV gold, naming lines after the lines, the ultimate lines in shit shows like Love Island and Come Dine With Me. So I thought I would we all discovered these like fucking like 10 years ago, but come up with some of my own proposals for golden lines from people who live on the lines. Starting with
A claustrophobic line. The Am I Gonna Collab with Peppa Pig line. The Horse Riding Gone Wrong line. The My Hair Has Changed, My Political Views Have Two line.
the Boaty McBoatface line.
And last but not least, the Honey G line.
Yeah, you thought you were going to be able to go the rest of your life not having to be reminded of Honey G, but I ruined that for you. Anyway, stupid names for Overground lines aside, whether you think the reality TV ones or the TFL ones are stupid, it's up to you. I'll let you discuss that in the comments, and I will see you in the next one. But ransom me over. I'm now going to visit all of the new Overground lines, what they're new, and back to the Maldon. And back to the Maldon. And whilst this hospital